Thank you. Good. So welcome to our mediation today. My name is Erin Dolan. I use she, her pronouns. I am going to be your mediator, and I just wanted to introduce Mike. Mike is going to be co-mediating with me today.
Hi.
Would you like to
Okay to call me
introduce
Mike.
yourselves? And then Ben and Darcy, is it okay to use first names today?
Yeah, that's great. I'm Ben. Good with Ben.
Yeah, Darcy works as well.
Great. So I just wanted to explain a little bit about the mediation process. We are here today to look through, facilitate a conversation that will help us structure the time and be productive with coming to, an agreement that we may not reach an agreement today, but that we will be looking at setting up an agenda and discussion points. And then Michael is here to assist with the process. He will allow us to use simultaneous individual meetings. We call those individual meetings caucuses. And he will be asking some questions. I'll be asking some questions. You'll be given equal opportunity to talk. And so I want to just say that, one of the most important things we're going to be doing is giving equal time to both sides. And I want to make sure that you understand that we are not lawyers. We're not offering legal advice. And that this time is important that we spend being unbiased. We have no vested interest in what's happening or the outcome of these proceedings. And we just want to explore perspectives from both sides and try to come to a place of better understanding for next steps. Okay? Do you have any questions for Mike or I about our rules?
No, that seems pretty clear.
Okay.
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment. Okay. So with our rules in mind, I also want to consider your role in mediation. And we're going to hear your opening statements in a moment. But it's important that each of you are willing to be open-minded about the perspectives of the other person and that you listen and feel heard. I want this to feel like a safe place. I mentioned that mediation is voluntary, and that means that you have the right to end these discussions if you wish. We don't have to come to an agreement today. However, I do want to remind you that if that's the case, you'll need to return to the judge so that you can follow the judiciary model for your divorce proceedings. And be mindful the judicial system wasn't developed to protect or accommodate specific interests within the dissolution of marriage. Okay.
Sounds good.
So yeah. Mike, do you have anything to add?
Nope, that sounds good. I was just echoing.
Okay. So some general ground rules. I first want to just ask, are either of you currently using a lawyer?
No, I haven't spoken with anybody.
Okay.
I used a lawyer to file the paperwork for the divorce.
Okay. So that's something we'll want to think about in confidentiality so that you can add a lawyer into any confidentiality statement that we agree to. So for the ground rules, I just want to start out with starting first for this session in the beginning, will specifically be designated speaking times. So when either Mike or I asks you a question, we'll call you by name. It'll be your turn to speak. And then I recommend, as we both have, some pen and paper to the side so that you can take notes if the other person is speaking and you have some comments you want to not forget. We'll circle back around to you and you'll have an opportunity to ask your questions or make your comments based on what you heard. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if anyone needs a break for any reason, the expectation is that you'll go along with the flow of the discussion, unless there's an emergency, of course. And if that's the case, just excuse yourself. Just in that same spirit, I want people to be respectful considering cell phone use. I want to establish that the expectation is we're going to try to actively listen to each other without preconceived notions about what's being said. This is very difficult. This is actually a very big ask. And I want it to be upfront in our ground rules because it's important for us to develop an understanding of each other and our opposing perspectives, but be able to communicate through it. So as we get further along in this process, we have to be able to negotiate. And I just want the ground rule of respectful communication to be in place. So there'll be several strategies Mike and I will be using today. And these include breaks, they include individual meetings, And then there's question and answer times. There's also going to be some summarizing of what we've heard or understood. These are actual summaries that we're helping to clarify. So if when we summarize what you said, it's not exactly what you meant, please feel free to correct us. We're not trying to frame this in with a specific goal in mind. We're unbiased parties. So we want you to feel like you can, jump in as needed. We're going to have the opportunity to do what's called a caucus. A caucus is individual meetings, and Mike will meet with one of you, I will meet with the other, and then we can talk about the topic at hand, whatever it is that we kind of came to an impasse and we feel like it could be really less on the spot and more thoughtful and reflective. You can bounce the ideas off of us. Mike and I work close together during this time, and then we'll come back together as a larger group so that we can go through kind of commonalities that we noticed and perspectives maybe Mike and I can help to use to get through the impasse. And the intent of this mediation ultimately is to come to a mutually acceptable, workable resolution. And if that's not possible, then my hope is at least the discussion will create an understanding of next steps and give us a way to facilitate more open conversation between the two of you so that you can ultimately resolve and dissolve your marriage. Any questions thus far? Okay, so the last piece that's very important is to have confidentiality. So confidentiality works in all parts of the mediation. So it's in this group session and also in the individual caucus sessions. And we're going to work with you very closely, but we want this to be something that you're able to say and rephrase and rethink and restate. And the confidentiality piece keeps it from becoming a he said, she said in mediation. All right, so what comes out of mediation is a written agreement, and the written agreement is what is shared. Okay, so at this time, I'd like to create a confidentiality agreement and ask if there's any stipulations that are going to be entered into the agreement for sharing information. So I'm going to assume that you'd like to be able to share your legal advisor. And then I'll put a stipulation for any legal advisor so that, Ben, if you decide to get a lawyer in the future, then you'd be able to share this with him.
Okay,
or
great.
her. Okay. So now that we've entered the information for sharing clauses into the agreement to mediate, I'd like to have each of us sign it before we continue. So I'm going to email that to you directly, and then you can electronically sign it. I have it ready to go. Would anybody like a brief break before we start? Mike, do you have anything to add on that you think maybe I've missed or forgotten at this point?
Just two minor things. So you'll notice that Aaron and I will take notes, and you're welcome to take notes too while one person is speaking, as opposed to interrupting and take notes while they're speaking. But if we don't come to any agreements, that will be destroyed. And conversely, we shouldn't be recording any of these sessions because of the confidential nature. And the last piece about the voluntariness of mediation, I know that the judges ordered you to be here, but we're not judges and we don't decide, and nor are you obligated. Any agreements that you do reach or come to today are voluntary. So I just wanted to add that just to make sure you understand it, even though he wanted you to come to mediation, there's no obligation. And also, if either of you decides they want to end the session, you're welcome to do that. I would just ask that you let myself or Aaron know the reasons for that in case we said something wrong or we got it wrong. We don't want to be that a cause of the end of mediation. But if you need to end it, you're certainly welcome to do that. That's all I have, Aaron, to add.
If that happens, I do prefer to do an individual caucus before ending, so that if you have the opportunity to just step away, talk to us individually before making your final decision to end altogether. All right. So let's start out with some opening statements. I understand that.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So if our lawyers have been added to the confidentiality agreement, does that mean that we can give any notes to them from this meeting for the future? Or
usually the stipulation has to do just with the agreement, the written agreement that comes out. But if you would like to add that to the confidentiality agreement, and that's something that we can put into the settlement, So the confidentiality agreement says that you're going to share the written document that comes out of mediation with the people listed in the agreement. And if, as part of the settlement agreement, you would like to put in a clause that you'd like to be able to share your notes with your lawyer, then that's something we can negotiate and that you both have to agree upon.
But I'm pretty sure your attorney would be still bound by the confidentiality rules within the context of this mediation. So he couldn't go and use that information in court. But if you want to confer with him to decide, is this a good choice or not, then that's okay. But as long as it stays within the confines of this mediation. Does that clarify your question, Darcy?
Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
Okay. Erin, does that make sense, that answer?
Yep.
Okay.
And also just be reminded that you're welcome to bring your attorney to a future session as needed as well. All right, so let's begin with a brief opening statement from each of you that explains a little bit about why the court has ordered your participation in mediation. So we're planning to follow opening statements with a few questions today, but we just wanted to start with your statement and have you discuss your kind of what brought you to this stage and why you ended up in mediation. Can we start? I know that Darcy filed, but I wanted to see if we minded starting with Ben. We'll kind of alternate back and forth with who gets to answer questions first, but I'd like to start with Ben for an opening statement, if we don't mind.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, like you said, Darcy filed, so she could probably speak more to, why we're here. And I think we just been stuck on a few pieces. We have, multiple homes and, there's things that she wants and things that I want. And I think we just don't know quite how to get there and have a conversation between ourselves. We're getting divorced, so it's hard to talk. And so just any help and guidance to just help us navigate splitting everything that makes sense to us would be helpful. I just, we have a boat. I love my boat, and I have woodworking stuff and a lot of tools and machines I've had a long time. I just want to make sure, I get those. Those are really important to me to have in my new life, So that's kind of all I have to say.
So in your view, it's mostly about kind of the division of property. That's
Yeah,
But-
just want to do it's fair, and I think it's just hard to have that conversation and know what the court would think is fair, and it just emotions run high, So
If I may, so it sounds like you really highly value your lifestyle, the house, boat. I mean, that's important to you, is things that you want to try and keep if possible.
yeah.
Okay.
Life's definitely getting, is changing, and those are some constants I want to try and keep.
Okay.
And Darcy, can you talk a little bit about why you feel we've come to this point and what you hope to get out of mediation today?
Sure. So, Ben and I were married for a long time, over 15 years, I think. And during that time, as you mentioned, we acquired quite a few properties and the boat, and he has his tools and I have my jewelry, and there's quite a few bank accounts that we're part of, and retirement accounts. And, part of why I think it got to the point where I filed for divorce is really that, we stopped being able to talk to each other. I can't remember the last time we had an actual conversation that, felt sort of meaningful in any way. So I don't feel like we've had any sort of real conversation about this so far. But there's definitely the house, there's our vacation house, which is a place that I particularly enjoy going to. And we have a rental property, so I'm not really sure how we split that. And I'll be honest, I don't quite understand all of, I heard there's a lot of legal implications for splitting the stock options that we have, and the retirement accounts, and I can't say that I fully understand them. So not 100% sure what to do
Okay,
in terms of making sure that it's equitable for splitting that up.
that makes sense. So you're looking to learn more about kind of the process. And you're also worried about a lot of the same points that Ben is with how things get divided equally.
Yeah, and I did consult a lawyer when I was filing for divorce, and he sort of mentioned that mediation was a good route because we'd have the ability to sort of mention like what was important to us and not just leave it to somebody else. And so like I mentioned and Ben mentioned too, like there are things that are more important to each of us. And so definitely want to make sure that I'm getting the things that I want, and that there are things that, like, if I'm not interested, you can get them without just sort of being randomly assigned
Yeah,
from a judge.
very smart.
So,
That's a very good way to look at it.
Yeah, and it sounds to me like you see this as a big ocean that you're not that familiar with. And I think you can help rely on us for some guidance. Again, we're not lawyers, we're familiar with the Colorado statutes, and we can help guide you, but whatever you agree to, it certainly can be subject to whatever you have a discussion with your lawyer after the fact. And the other thing I'll say is it's always better to decide between the two of you than have a judge decide, because most times what a judge decides, neither of you are going to be happy with. So if you can come to some agreement today or in our sessions, that's always better, and it's always subject to Darcy, you going back to your lawyer, and we would probably recommend, Ben, at some point you also have a lawyer, because you do have some substantial assets. So it would be good to have a third party, your counsel, review any agreements, sometime down the road.
Okay. And I can do that before we, if I feel good about if I feel good about, if we get like 95% of the way there, and then I can kind of take whatever potential final agreements we have, I can take that to a lawyer at that point.
Right. Our agreements will be essentially tentative agreements, subject to going back to your lawyer, if that answers your question.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we'll write draft right on the top, draft to be revised by lawyer. Yeah.
Okay. That sounds good.
So I want to follow up your statements with a general question, just to try and frame the work we're going to do. I just wanted to see, how would you rank the following topics in order of priority for working together through the development of a settlement agreement? So they're just three things. One is effective communication. That's something I've heard you both say, that communication in the past hasn't been great, and that's something that you're looking to do, to be able to talk through these different issues. Perceived equity. That's something that I've heard you both say, to split equally. Equally doesn't necessarily mean equitable. So just a little bit about what the perceived equity is, so that you have an equal balance, even if that's not an equal number. And then the financial interests piece. So which would be the top priority of those three: communication, equity, or finance? Darcy, you went second last time, so do you want to go first this time?
I would say equity for me, for sure.
And then Ben, what would be your top that you'd like to focus your perspective?
Yeah. I would say probably, probably finance and communication, like close second.
Okay.
I still, work and stuff a little bit, so I'm not terribly worried about, having to be set up right now, and I, still have earning power and all of that. So I'm not super concerned. I do want Darcy to get, what she deserves, and I'm not out to,
Okay.
I'm not out to squeeze her out of anything. So I do want to make that known.
Good. Oh, thank you. Mike's going to start sharing his screen for notes.
Yeah, I just wanted to just kind of write down as we go what the priorities were.
Yeah.
I have a question for you guys. Are you still living in the same house, or have you separated? And if you separated, have you kind of thought about or discussed at any level who wants to live where, in what house? Has any conversations happened?
We currently still live in the same house, different rooms right now. Our renters for the rental property are about to end their lease fairly soon, so we had some discussion about maybe just, one of us moving in there, what to do about that.
Can you
I don't
can you talk a little bit more about that? Are there any other areas that you've already considered? Possibly things that have already been agreed upon, like is Ben's car Ben's car? Is Darcy's car Darcy's car? Have you had any of those initial conversations?
I don't know that we had a discussion about it, but I think we've been using our cars separately. And I think maybe I just assumed that, my car would be my car and Ben's car would be Ben's car.
Yeah.
Some of that stuff is easy. Sometimes if you start with the things that are kind of thought of as being his or hers or, either way.
Mhm. Yeah, I kind of assume the same thing. Just why fix what's it's kind of an ironic statement. Why fix what's not broken in that sense,
Right.
And I don't know that either of us really need two cars and leave the other person without a car.
Right? Yeah, not
Good. Okay.
don't
So
want
that's,
to.
I mean, that's an easy place to
Mhm.
start then, right? So there's the cars, the houses. Now, Darcy, were you also thinking the same way that when the renter's lease came up, one of those, it's a two family?
Yeah, I mean, it's a duplex. So like what could happen is that the rental property is complicated, right? Because there is potential to earn money from that, which Ben has been the breadwinner in the
Yeah.
family. So that's something, but it's a different area. So like would have to get used to that. And like it's more of an apartment than a house, that the person who would move in, leaving the house would be moving into. So I'm not, it would be a lifestyle change for whoever did it.
So I think we should just put that onto the agenda. That's kind of a deeper conversation, right? The cars are easy, the house is hard.
Mhm,
So, let's look at that as housing options,
mhm.
just for the agenda. Mike, are you taking notes at the moment?
Yep,
Is that
I'm
okay for
typing
you?
right. Yep, I'm typing and I'll put it back up there in a sec.
I'm gonna be so spoiled by the end of this.
Mhm.
So if we have, housing is one. There was also, Darcy, you said you really don't understand a lot about the long-term and short-term investments, the 401ks, retirement funds. Much of that is actually divided by laws. So the Colorado courts, the Colorado divorce laws have certain regulations about how things are divided. If you've been married you certainly have been married for long enough.
Mhm.
So we'll go through just the court or the legal process of how those things get divided, usually. And then based on that guideline, we can talk about it. So I'd say, Mike, why don't we say the division of,
I put sharing of, okay, I could put division, sharing of 401k accounts. I'll put sharing/division.
yeah,
Can you
And
guys all see the document I'm typing on the screen?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
yes. So does the boat need its own category? Darcy, are you feeling like the boat is Ben's boat, or is the boat something that needs to be determined for equity versus equality?
The boat, in a lot of ways is Ben's boat. Like he's the one who knows how to run it. Like I don't know that I would be able to do it on my own, but it was a pretty big investment. made by both of us. So like, I think in terms of equity, like it's something that I would want considered for sure.
So equity for the value of the boat. So that means, Ben, that would be something that's barterable.
Mm.
So if, you keep the boat, then you just have to understand that's worth a certain value. So if there's something later that's not as important to you, and then, Darcy would have kind of these are her toys, these are your toys.
Mhm. Would I be able to, I know, Darcy did put, help with some of the payment for the boat. Like, would I be able to, like pay her back for what she put into
So,
it?
like buying her
or
out of
buy her
the-
out of the boat, kind of?
That brings us to a good question. So do you have you gone through and actually looked at whose name is on what? So, ownership wise with fair market value, it also depends. Fair market value, obviously, if it's in your name, you could sell it. If it's not in your name, you can't sell it.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, the boat's in my name. I don't really remember with some of the properties and stuff we bought so long ago. I don't really remember if it's both our names or one or whatever it is. I'm not sure if that matters or,
You guys bought it together while you were married, right?
yeah.
So generally that would be marital property.
Okay. Regardless of whose name's
yeah.
on it.
And let me just bring up another worksheet here that this will be kind of a blueprint going forward, because it's a lot easier than the forms.
Yeah.
This is kind of a spreadsheet, and I took the liberty based on the information you and the court provided to list your houses and the boat. And you see this kind of, column at the bottom shows your total equity. So, if, for example, Ben were to keep the boat, the boat is marital property. There's a general equal sharing of the equity. So Ben, you were to take the boat, you'd probably have to consider buying out Darcy for half the value of the boat. So you see the boat here is at 11,500. So if it went to Ben and I put 11,500, you could see that on the equity column, you're getting 11.5. So it would be divided at some point. You'd essentially be buying half the boat out, if that makes sense.
So then when you go down to the next column, unless he decides $11,000 worth of jewelry is going to stay with Darcy. So then that's where I mean by the bartering, whether you're looking at value or you're looking at equity,
Hmm.
So you're trying to find an equal balance to negotiate who keeps what.
Right.
So is all the jewelry barterable? Like or I didn't say that correctly, but because some of it is stuff that I had before the marriage, some of it's stuff that I've gotten from my grandma.
Right. So
That
yeah, the stuff you had before the marriage would not be in this column here. Okay. And the gifts, I believe that, we're gonna have to double check on this, but I think if you got it from your grandmother as a gift, I don't know that is in the marital pot. Erin, do you know the answer to that?
I don't believe it does. That would be considered family heirlooms.
Yeah, or separate, it would be separately owned property. So let's say